Hello and welcome to Book Lovers Companion. My name is Edith and right next to me is my lovely co-host, the chattering teacup.
Hello.
And here with us, returning guest, crime fiction author Cassie Rush, also known as Caroline Goldsworthy. Hello and welcome back.
Hi guys, and thanks ever so much for having me back on the show.
It's our delight to have you back on our show because it's been a while since you were on our show. I looked it up. It was in May 2020.
Right. So just before, well, yes, we were in the thick of COVID at that time, weren't we? And I was writing my lockdown novel.
Yes, and a lot has happened since then.
You've been quite busy.
Oh, yes. Not just writing, but recently also with events because we met in person.
Briefly.
It was a pleasure seeing you at Crime Fest.
Yes, yeah, it was lovely to be there, and it was really nice to be there and be on the independent author panel, which I'm told by somebody that it was the best panel that they'd seen throughout the whole festival. I think it was quite lively because, for independent authors, it's difficult to keep them quiet.
Oh, yeah, I can imagine. And wasn't that the panel you were supposed to be on in 2020, but then they cancelled?
It was, yes, but then it was cancelled because of COVID, and the world shut down, and we did nothing.
Yeah, and
except get fat.
Yeah, that's true. That's true indeed. And I think I would say it's a plus for the organizers that they did organize it when Crimefest came back.
Yeah, it was lovely to be back. It was lovely to be back in Bristol, and it feels a bit like coming home because obviously it's was that the third or the fourth time I'd been? I can't remember. But it was lovely to see everybody and to see you guys again and just sort of catch up. And it's beginning to feel like going back to school almost, or going on holiday with old school friends because you see people that you haven't seen for ages, you haven't seen since last year.
Yeah.
Maybe a bit like a reunion.
A reunion, yes, exactly. A school reunion.
Yeah.
I've never done one of those. Have you?
Once.
Yeah, once. Yeah.
Yeah. Was it any good?
Yeah. Well.
I mean, it's a bit fun, but you mostly talk about old times and what happened in between, and that's about it.
Yeah.
And there's nothing else that you've got in common anymore, is there?
Not anymore.
Yeah.
And the mean girls are still mean.
True.
We haven't had them.
And the morons are still morons.
Why should it change?
Yeah, exactly.
Nothing changes.
You might get older and it look a bit different, but...
Older and better.
Plus ça change, plus ça même chose.
Yeah, exactly. And Cassie, something else, since we introduced you as Cassie, a.k.a. Caroline, something else happened. You are a first-time cat servant.
Not a first-time cat servant, but I'm and here she comes. She is prowling into the room. But no, I've been a cat slave before.
Yeah, it comes through in the book.
Yeah.
That's very authentic writing about the cat.
That's why I asked if she's a first-time cat servant.
Yeah. No, I've been a cat slave before, but I haven't had a cat for some considerable time. And I've been looking around for a little while, and there she was. I looked at one of the kittens first, but then Evie she's now 10 months old. She was born wild last November. Unfortunately, she's already had her own litter of kittens. So she was rescued with another one, maybe two other female cats, and a whole host of kittens. And Blue Cross just put them all in the same unit together because they couldn't tell which mother went with which kitten, and they thought it alternated anyway. So yes, we've been together 4 weeks now. Yes, so I know my place.
You're starting out together.
Quick learner.
Oh yeah. She will teach you, no worries. It will all come back to you.
Yeah.
Because she said it, and I said it, because in your cozy crime fiction, a cat features very prominently, and that gave us the idea that you know a little bit about cats.
Yeah. I've been owned by cats before. But I've never had a Siamese. In in the Cassie Rush books, the cat is a Siamese. I've never had a Siamese before, and I understand that they're quite noisy. They're quite vocal.
But they are very talkative.
Bossy.
Yes, yes, and that's what I've tried to make Thalia be, which is, you know, bossy. And of course, Thalia being the name of the muse of comedy, Thalia in the books is quite grumpy. But nobody's picked up on that so far.
No, she seems grumpy on the covers, but in the books not so much. I mean, our CEO, he is half Siamese, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. His character is completely 100%.
Yeah, that's
right.
The
Okay.
thing in the beginning, she always said that cat's crazy. It's completely crazy the way we behave. Yeah. Then we looked it up on the internet. It's not crazy. That's Siamese.
Mm-hmm. So it's just how they behave.
A bit different.
Yeah. A bit different,
but lovely.
Yeah. Yeah. Mine's like me. You know, 57 varieties of every single nationality, country that's ever invaded this tiny little island that I live on.
Perfect mixture.
Yeah.
Combination.
So the cat's a moggy and I'm a moggy too.
Perfect mixture.
Yeah, definitely.
Couldn't be better. So your cozy crime. Raising the Roof is the first one. Literary Murder is the second one. And coming out very soon is On the Stroke of Death. So we have read book number 1, and it was a fantastic read, Teacup, wasn't it?
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And the thing that I wondered about, because I've never heard about it, a part-time vicar. But in the back, I read you talked to someone who was a part-time vicar.
One of my friends has recently retired from nursing, and she is still a part-time vicar. Now, what I've made it appear in the books is that role is paid, but of course it's not. In reality, my friend Judy, her role as part-time vicar, it's not paid, but you know, it's a role. I'm not a particularly religious person myself, but I've been to see her give services, and she's an amazing person, and she is also now obviously my technical advisor, so that I don't get too many things wrong. And I also now have a Book of Common Prayer, and I have the right version of the Bible, so that I can look up references and try and pretend I know what I'm talking about.
It was a completely new concept, because you can't be a part-time priest, I suppose, when you are a Roman Catholic.
No, because it's more. I think it's because it's a vocation, isn't it? Yeah. And that it does take over your whole life. Whereas my friend has been nursing. Her husband has recently retired from being a ranger, so his role was. I don't think he was a park ranger, but his role was. Working for the council and sort of taking care of the environment and different areas of outstanding natural beauty, easy for you to say. And so he would be doing bird counts and making sure that habitats were right. So that is something that's going to come into the fourth novel, which I'm writing at the moment, and the working title for that is Baked Fate. So it was sort of like Eastwold Bake Off.
And where did you? I mean, you just said it's your friend was inspiring you, but anything or everything else about your character, Alina Maricote, where did that come from?
The name came to me as I was walking down the stairs one day, and I don't know where I've picked it up from at all. The idea was that I wanted someone that everyone would be comfortable talking to, because that seems to be one of the features of cozy mysteries. You know, Miss Marple, Hercule Poirot, Lord Peter Wimsey, all of those sort of like, you know, golden age cozy mystery writers. You know, even Jessica Fletcher. So I was thinking Cabot Cove, but who's the person?
Yeah,
because you want someone that people will talk to. As an amateur sleuth, you can't go in and just ask questions and expect an answer. It's got to be part of a normal, natural conversation. And I thought, well, people will talk to the vicar, but the vicar may not get around much, but they'll also talk to a district nurse. So that's how I combined the jobs. And then I suddenly realised, of course, Judy. She does both jobs. She works for a GP, or she worked for a GP surgery. She works as a part-time vicar. I'll talk to her about the idea, and she just said, "Yes, do it. Sounds brilliant." And it's been well received. People have enjoyed it. I think they like the lightheartedness of it. I certainly love writing that, because as we are sort of, the world is not a very nice place at the moment. We're all sort of struck down with COVID. It's still out there, as we were chatting earlier. Even I've come down with it. So it's nice to write something that it's about murder. There's a mystery, but the feature of Cosy Mysteries is that it's never bloody, it's never unpleasant, and the whole theme, the whole idea of it is more about you setting the puzzle and the readers trying to resolve it. And it's much more that kind of competition between the writer and the reader. Let me lead you down this little garden path
where you might find
the interesting thing, I think, is that in these Cozy Mysteries, it's not brutally anything, but sometimes more bodies drop than in a darker crime story. Why is that, do you think?
I honestly, I don't know. It has to be said, in my debut novel, I did manage to kill 7 people. And when I mentioned that to Anthony Horowitz, who I'd met at a dinner just as I was about to publish it, even he was impressed that I'd killed 7 people. And what he was telling me was, when he did the Midsummer Murders, he would try and kill somebody just before the commercial break. And he would try and get a body in there. So we had quite a giggle about that.
I can remember. I don't know what the name was, but we've seen one episode, Midsummer Murders, at one point, and you're right. After a year, before or after every ad break, there was a body. They added up quite a lot.
Yes. And so again, it's supposed to be a very gentle crime series, but there were bodies dropping like flies.
Yeah.
And Midsummer, those villages do exist. They are a part, and I think it's in the Cotswolds. Bearing in mind that you've got the Midsummer Murders going on in the Cotswolds, you've then got Agatha Raisin going on in the Cotswolds. It's beginning to be a very, very dangerous part of the UK to live in. Very dangerous, although it's very pretty.
You're much safer in London.
Do there still people live there? I mean...
Well, obviously, you can't go there without tripping over a body of some sort.
Exactly. I mean, it's far more dangerous than, let's say, London.
Far more dangerous than walking around, London in the dark. And there are still some quite dodgy parts of London, but I'm not a Londoner, so I'm not going to mention any of them. But there are places I wouldn't go.
Yeah, well, better not. But also your village. I mean, it's picturesque. It seems nice, and
it's beautiful.
Yeah, you set the stage perfectly, and then it happens.
And also on the outside, everyone seems very nice. But if you dig a bit deeper,
but I think that's kind of English village life. I mean, I've called it Eastwold because I like to move streets around. So Mill Lane, where Alina's cottage is, there is no lighthouse cottage. In fact, Mill Lane's nowhere near the lighthouse. But it's based on a beautiful little Suffolk town called Southwold. And when I start doing the paperbacks, I've been to Southwold several times, and I've got some photographs that I've taken of the church, and I'll be putting line drawings of the church between the chapter heading and the start, so that church actually exists, and I've taken those photos myself. But it's a lovely place. But it is very picturesque. But even there, my friend has joined me into the Facebook group. So even there are undercurrents. And I don't know how many there are going to be in this series, because I didn't know whether to end it at a certain point or whether to carry on. So my writing coach has told me to get the cover for the fourth one, put it up for pre-order, and see how popular the series continues to be. And that'll give me an idea of whether to continue it or move to my new series.
And you also said, I mean, it's the village life and so on. And Alina, she's the vicar and she's a nurse, and people talk to a vicar or a nurse, but she's a newcomer. So would it be easier for a vicar and a nurse that people talk to her, although she's a newcomer, compared to someone else? Do they? I mean, do they have to talk to her? I mean, if you're a nurse, okay, yeah, you have to tell, people have to tell you what ails you and so on. But do you really have to talk to the vicar all the time? I don't know.
Not all the time.
But it helps.
I mean, within Southwold, the church is still very well attended. And so people do know the vicar, they know the bishop as well. So in Southwold, I know that the church is still quite, it's part of village life. And it is, although it's set in modern times, it does hark back to an earlier and a more gentle aspect of village life, where the church would be quite central. But I just wanted someone that people would talk to, and that they wouldn't feel threatened by talking to as well. Whereas, sometimes I think doctors very, very busy, so they haven't got time for people. So it would be more difficult to talk to the doctor. Although, I've got Dr. Miriam McCarthy. It is getting quite busy at this surgery, so I may need a new doctor quite soon. But that doesn't necessarily have to be a nice person. It could be somebody that, it could be sort of like a Dr. Shipman.
True.
And I think that a vicar and also a nurse are people you're expected to trust. So that's a positive. And I think she gets to see different sides of people as a vicar and as a nurse. It gets more complete picture.
Because she's a district nurse, and her job is to go and see people within their homes. And this was something that Judy explained to me, was that there would have to be a huge element of trust between the surgery, the church, and the clients, so that when she goes in as the nurse, she's there, she's doing her nursing duties, which is, a district nurse will come and visit you when you've got an injury or something, and you need dressing, or you need blood tests taken or something like that. But as a nurse, she has to be very professional, and she's not allowed to bring God into the situation. When she's the vicar, she tries to keep being the vicar and not bringing her nursing side of things into it. But as a nurse, as a doctor, you're always going to get, I've got this bit of a rash on my arm. Do you want to have a look at it? So that's always going to be an issue for her, although I haven't brought that in too much. And obviously there's a whole sort of care in the community. So there's Kriya Andara, who's the social worker. She's been sort of a background character in books 1 and 2, but she'll come out into the 4 more in books 3 and in book 4. So we'll actually sort of meet Kriya, learn a bit more about her and her background, and where she fits into village life.
So we at least know that she survives.
Until then. Yes.
At least until book 4. Who knows what then happens?
I haven't written book 4 yet. So.
Okay, maybe something happens. But
maybe.
Are you going to establish a sort of cast around our vicar?
Yeah, I think, and again, that's a feature of Cosy Mysteries, that you've got your central character, and they have a group around them who are sidekicks, confidants, close friends, etc. And then you have the wider cast, who are all the potential victims, potential murderers, etc. It's English village life. People will drop dead at the drop of a hat. So you've got those. Major Fitzgerald, he's got a bit of a dodgy past, which we don't learn about in either book 1 or book 2, but more comes out later. But he was her first friend when she came to the village. He's a major confidant. He's also quite romantically interested in Alina. And, it's a case of, are those feelings returned or not?
Mm-hmm. But also the eye is very interesting to her, isn't he?
Oh, he's absolutely gorgeous. He's absolutely gorgeous.
So I guess he's going to return, I suppose.
Oh yes, he is going to be a feature, and we learn more about Richard Laidlaw as book 3 goes on. Mm-hmm. We learn more about Alina's past and her missing husband, who's been declared dead. So we learn more about that aspect of her life, and then it sort of like has an impact on the characters and on the future relationships of some of the characters.
Do you also reveal how Fitz is able to acquire all the information he does?
Oh, I know exactly how Fitz acquires the information he does.
Are you going to
I know exactly what he used to do. And I'll be drip feeding that as we go through. He's had access to very secret information in the past, and that's how he knows what he knows.
See?
And he's still got he's still got access to information.
Okay. He reminds me a bit of the secretary in Donna Leon's Brunetti books. She always acquires information.
Nobody knows how,
but she does.
Yeah, but she does.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And you said
interesting.
Yes, sorry, go on.
No, interesting. I was teaching. I teach creative writing on a Saturday morning. I was talking to a couple of students. And in Felixstowe, which is the town I was in, there is a book festival every year. And one of the presenters this year was a lady called Stella Rimington. Now, she was the head of, I think, MO5, or was it MO6? I can't know. She was Britain's top spy. Obviously now retired. And my friend, or my student, now friend, was saying that it was very, very difficult to get information out of her. I was saying, she used to be a spy. She's not going to be the sort of person who gives an awful lot of information away. And also, a woman in a male-dominated environment like the Secret Service. I think it would have been quite difficult to be yourself in such an environment.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, true.
Probably she's still not allowed to talk about a lot of things.
Yeah. I mean, I can't remember the writer's name, but there was a book that came out several years ago called Spycatcher. There was some furore about it because potentially the author was giving away information that shouldn't have been in the public domain. I can't remember what happened. I mean, it was quite some time ago that the book came out. But yeah, it's...
I mean, isn't it also, or hasn't it been the case with the women who worked at Bletchley Park? I mean, they couldn't talk about that for decades.
Yeah. Decades, absolutely decades.
Yeah.
Must be
yeah, that was interesting place to go to, because they've set it up, and all of the little huts and everything are set up as if the people have just gone for lunch.
Yeah.
So handbags and cardigans are just sort of hanging on the backs of chairs. Air Force jackets are sitting on the backs of chairs and everything, and it does it. And some of the desks it sort of says back in 5 minutes or something like that.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, it's unbelievable how that works. I mean, we can only imagine. Before we started our recording, you said you suspected Cassie Rush is more successful than Caroline Goldsworthy. Why is that, do you suppose?
Oh, I'm just looking at the royalties. So I can see as Caroline Goldsworthy, I have 4 books out. As Cassie Rush, I have 2 books out. Most of my royalties are coming from the Cosy Mysteries. So I will be writing more as Caroline Goldsworthy. I've got a follow-up to the Love Trap was a standalone, but I will be writing another domestic thriller in the next year or so. I've got for NaNoWriMo, I'll be running a course prior to NaNoWriMo to help people prepare for it, because I think NaNoWriMo, writing nearly 2,000 words every day is quite a challenge for people. So I'll be running a a course teaching people how to plan, how to prepare for that. I'll be running a course helping people to plan and prepare for that. But as part of that, I'm planning on writing a World War II thriller, a spy thriller, which I'm very excited about. And hence why I've been going to places like Bletchley Park and the Science Museum and reading an awful lot about the women of the Special Operations Executive.
Yeah. So that would absolutely be the book for me.
I'd better get it written then, hadn't I, Edith?
Yes. No, you have to. You have to.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, I've done NaNoWriMo a few times. I've never managed the 50,000 words myself, but this book, I've spent an awful lot more time. I spent the last couple of years planning it, outlining it, getting to know my characters, and actually, working out what the inciting incident is, what pushes her from her normal life of being the Lady Clarissa Byrne is her name, and she refuses to come back home to Tattingstone Hall, where her parents live. She refuses to come back from London, and it's, London during the Blitz. Fortunately, I was a good girl, and I spent a lot of time listening to my grandmother talking about London during the Blitz. So I've got some little memories of those. And then, she comes back to her flat one day to find that her flatmate is dead. And then she learns an awful lot more about her flatmate's life, etc. And that's what pushes her over the edge from being, a happy little office clerk to thinking, well, maybe I can disguise myself, maybe I can do more for the war effort. And there were lots of things going on during the Blitz that I think are coming out now, obviously 70 odd years later. So it's going to be fun. I'm going to enjoy writing it. Escapism.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you mean, when you just said there's a lot of things coming out that were going on during the Blitz, do you also mean things like crime that has been going on and which has been disguised because of the bombing? I mean, or not just disguised, but could have been hidden.
Covered up. I found out about a serial killer who was operating during the Blitz. And that person will be making an appearance.
So I suppose it's he got away?
Haven't quite worked out that yet.
Okay. People were busy with staying alive, so probably there wasn't enough time or resources to police anything.
Yeah.
It was all about survival, wasn't it? There were jolly big bombs coming across, and as my grandmother said, while you could still hear it, it was fine. It was when it went quiet.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that was the scariest part of all, is when the V2 bombs went quiet, because that's when they were about to land. So I was a good girl and I listened to my granny.
Good for you.
Yes, and I shall be dedicating the book to my granny.
Wonderful.
Years, let's say decades ago, I was at I think it was a war museum, and back then you could enter a room where they more or less simulated what people experienced in bomb shelters and so on.
Oh, really?
I think
that would be amazing.
Had noise and it was a bit shaking, as far as I remember.
Yeah,
it makes you. That
would be amazing.
Remake, but thinking about it, you start thinking it was scary.
It was terrifying.
Yeah,
it must have been absolutely terrifying.
Yeah,
and people just got on with their lives.
Yeah,
I mean, they had to. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to manage these situations if you just didn't just get on with your life.
Of course, life had to go on, not just in the city, but also in the country. That's what I like about Foyle's War. I mean,
back to Anthony Horowitz.
But I think it's a great series, because you have the detective who doesn't want to be a detective at the moment. He wants to go to war, but they convince him there's still so much going on. Like I said, there's so much going on still. Yeah. We have a war going on. Yes, but for other people, life also goes on, and also crime.
I'm watching them over and over again, because for me, the way they're showing Hastings during the Second World War, and the clothes and the mannerisms and the cars, all of those things are atmosphere that you can bring into a novel, and will make the novel more realistic. Yeah. But yes, a beautifully written series. And obviously written by Anthony Horowitz. It was his creation.
Yeah.
Gosh, he's so successful.
Yeah.
It's really frustrating. He's such a nice man as well.
He seems nice, yeah?
He is.
He lives, really like him.
He lives in Suffolk and probably about sort of 10, 20 miles from where I live. So, I know which village he lives in. So, yeah. But yeah, thoroughly nice man. Met him a few times now.
Would you also say that when you write historic crime fiction, because you've already written one, which takes place even earlier? World building because that's what you do as a historic writer. You do world building. Let's be honest here. It's even harder than writing crime fiction that is contemporary.
After I wrote the Anglo-Saxon murder mystery, I was very happy to get back to mobile phones, CCTV, automatic number plate recognition, all of those things. And that, I mean, I have toyed with the idea of a second one, and I've even got an idea for the starting scene. There was certainly enough going on politically for it to be possible to write another one. But it took me a year to write with all of the research and everything. So, historical mysteries are more difficult because there is so much more going on. That said, I am now just outlining a 1920s cozy mystery series. And so that has been wonderful. It's just lovely. The clothes, the cars, the drinks, the matinee idols. I'd forgotten about cigarette holders. How can you forget about cigarette holders? So I'm doing lots of research. I know who my character is. I know what the first crime is. I'm thinking probably 6 books in that series. So I've got lots of different ideas for what happens in each of those books. But it's that getting that atmosphere right, the language of the time. So that's why I'm reading lots of Agatha Christie and Dorothy L. Sayers, and another writer called Patricia Wentworth. I'm reading her stuff because it was written in the 20s, so it was contemporary in the 1920s.
Is that
eerily is 100 years ago.
True. Yep. Is that your Kim David series, or is this another one?
Right. So
you just mentioned it in the book at the end.
So Kim has been. She is on the list. She is on the plan. She is on the plan. But she's here.
Okay.
This is the plan.
So
I bought 3 pre-made covers from the lady who's designed all of the Raising the Roof, the Eastwold covers. So I bought 3 pre-mades, and I did start writing that series, but I was pantsing it. I hadn't planned it out or anything like that, so I didn't really know where I was going. But I am going to be still working on it, and the animal in that is going to be a Rottweiler puppy. I've never had a Rottweiler. I have had several puppies, but I've never had a Rottweiler. I'm following a Facebook group. I'm following a Rottweiler group on Facebook, and Rottweiler puppies are an awful lot bigger than I'd anticipated. So some of the features I'm going to struggle with, because obviously my Doberman puppy, when I first got her, she was 12 weeks and she weighed 13 kilos, and I'm now getting the impression that a Rottweiler puppy at that sort of age will be weighing a little bit more.
Not so easy to carry around.
No, he's not something that you're going to put in a tote bag and sling over your shoulder.
Nope.
No. So I'm still working on that. She has started life off as a wedding planner, and she is working with an old school frenemy, who is the bride, and so there's all of that stuff going on. But I'm afraid Kim has been put on the back burner a little bit. But she'll probably make an appearance in 2024, which scarily will come around a lot more quickly than any of us appreciate.
Yes, probably. But you also have me for the 1920s, not just World War II.
But I mean, it just, bearing in mind that, Europe has just recovered from a war. In America, you've got prohibition starting, because a lot of the 1920s cozies are set in America. So you've got prohibition. At least in Britain, you're still allowed to drink. So that's coming out quite a lot in the cozies that I'm reading at the moment. And obviously I'm reading them religiously because it's part of my research. That, and I love them. So, if you're going to be a writer, why not write what you absolutely love?
Yeah.
They say write what you know, but actually I think write what you love, because it makes you so much more enthusiastic about what you're doing.
That's true. And also, write what you know. It's not not a bad advice, but what do you know about Klingons?
Well, you see, I always think it's write what you know and research what you don't. And again, a conversation we were having this morning is how amazing is the human imagination.
Yes,
because Klingons, where did they come from?
Yeah,
who thought of those? Who thought of them? Or the Ferengi, or the Borg?
Exactly.
But they're fun. To play around with.
Yeah, but that's what it's all about. I mean, I've set my guys the homework of writing a feel-good story today, and one of them sat there. I thought, when we started off, I hadn't got a clue what I was going to do. But of course, 2 hours later, we've talked about it, and we've had bounced lots of ideas around, and she's going scribble, 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 scribble. It's because she's bursting with ideas.
Yeah,
but that's kind of what it's all about. And write what you know. Is it bad advice? And I think, well, what do you know about? What do we as people know about? And we know about human relationships, and all stories are about human relationships. Yeah. And then you bring in that conflict, individuals against each other, of individuals against society, against nature, against fate, against the gods. Yeah. Against technology.
Maybe it's a better advice than to say write about what you know, and also combine it with things you can imagine.
Yeah, but if you research something you know about, the concept of learning is just kind of researching.
It's just research, isn't it? Yeah.
And regarding research, do you think there's a difference in what you can get away with between Cosy and the rest of the crime, or do you have the research the same way and be authentic the same way?
I will be quite honest, and my editor has written on a couple of pages with the Cosy crime, I'm going to let you get away with this because it is Cosy. If it was a proper crime novel, or if it was a strict crime novel, if it was one of your police procedurals, I would not let you get away with this. And my character Alina has a lot more leeway in the way that she talks to the detective, in the way that she can get information out of other people, and then relay that to the detective as she chooses. If it was a police procedural, you wouldn't be able to get away with that
because because police officers have a rule of conduct. Code of conduct. Sorry.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
They have codes and rules that they have to work by. And the lovely thing when you look at old mysteries is the way that the police are spoken to. Oh no, I'm not going to talk to you. Lord Heathcote will say, get out, I'm not going to talk to you, I'm not going to mean myself to talk to you. And these days you wouldn't be able to dismiss talking to a detective. You would be arrested. And you would be interviewed under caution.
You saw the stark difference between the different times in Life on Mars. The way they did it nowadays and back in the 70s. Completely different concept of policing.
Yes. Yeah.
So if you get away with some things set in the 70s.
And to be honest, people look back at the 70s and sort of revere the 70s, but I lived through the 70s. There is no way I'm going to do that fashion again. I had to live through that. I had to live through orange and brown flowery curtains. I remember my mother painting the ceiling in our tiny 2-up, 2-down Victorian terraced workman's cottage. And she painted the ceiling a colour called sienna, which is a dark orange. And the reason she painted it was obviously it was the 70s, but because my father smoked so heavily, if you painted anything white, It was instantly, it was yellow within sort of 2 or 3 weeks anyway. So why not just sort of like jump the gun and go straight for orange? But it was hideous. And there's a photo of my sister and myself in brown trousers. I was allowed platform shoes. We had bright yellow nylon shirts on and vest tops, tank tops that were brown and yellow. And I don't know if I've got that photo somewhere or if my sister has got that photo. So yeah. The 70s were a special time.
But also the 80s, they were a bit different regarding the style of clothes.
But the music.
The music's great. But also in the 70s. But I think a few years ago, I saw people, because neon colors became fashionable again, and they only thought they didn't look good the first time around. So, it's the same.
They still don't look good now.
No.
So, am I right to assume that the 70s will never feature as historic fiction in your books? As a time period?
I don't think so. I don't have good memories of the 70s. Okay. You know, things like the 3-day working week. You know, losing power constantly. We were quite lucky. We lived near the hospital, so we didn't lose power as frequently as other people. Rubbish piled high in the streets. And you know, I remember the political campaigns. Labour isn't working, and the long line of people who were unemployed. So. You know, I lived through that. I was 10 in 1973. So most of the 70s, I was a teenager and becoming more politically aware. So I don't have good memories of the 70s. I don't think it was. I don't think it was a good time. And I know lots of people sort of look back and see it with rose-tinted spectacles, but I'm afraid I don't.
Yeah, and you said the 20s. I mean, the golden age. Yeah, I
don't think it was called the Golden Age at the time, though, was it?
No, it wasn't. It is now. But do you think that because it was a time of change, we are so pulled into those stories?
I think it was because it was a time of unbridled gaiety, enjoyment, just the relief of, you know, the war to end all wars, the First World War. So it was, at the time, it was called the War to End All Wars, the Great War. Then there was Spanish flu. So, you know, swathes of people, communities were wiped out. You know, lots of young men were lost. There were more spinsters from that time, just due to the numbers of young men that were lost. And I think the Roaring Twenties was a backlash against that unpleasantness, that austerity. And it was sort of, you know, live life to the full.
Yeah, but wasn't the Roaring Twenties and all the parties and so only happening in the big cities? I think rural life was completely different.
I don't. Yeah, I must admit, I would probably need to read a bit more about rural life because I'm planning on setting some of it in sort of country estates. So they would be, you know, in North Yorkshire and Derbyshire, etc. And I read something the other day which I hadn't realised, that the Bright Young Things were only in London. They weren't in New York. They weren't in other big cities. I mean, people have told me to watch the Miss Fisher mysteries, which are great, but they're set in Melbourne.
Yeah.
So, you know, different fashion, different drinks, different cars, different mannerisms, different language. So, you know, and one of the authors I follow, a lady called Colette Clark. She sets her Cosy Mysteries in New York. As she said, she once had a layover at Heathrow Airport, and she didn't feel that gave her enough insight into the British way of life to write a British Cosy Mystery. So she set it in New York instead, because she knows about New York. Write what you know.
Yeah, exactly. Imagine that. You don't get enough insight just on a layover.
No. And what she said was, you know, about the Britishisms and the British way of life, etc. And she said that, you know, readers of Cosy Mystery, readers of historical mysteries are quite severe, and they want facts as realistic as you can make them. So it's going to be a challenge.
Yeah.
It's the 1920s.
I like to mention the bit you wrote about the British English at the back of the book.
Yes. I read a lot of American books, and there's one phrase, and I get a little tick under my eye, and it's when they say the dress fit perfectly. No, it didn't. The dress fitted perfectly. Mm-hmm. And they'll use that for present and for past tense. The dress fits perfectly. The dress fitted perfectly. But on the other way around, and I've had criticism in some of my my reviews about my English, about my grammar, etc., because an American reviewer is seeing the way I speak English as a mistake because it's not American English.
Yes, yeah.
Which is why I sometimes post images of Her Majesty the Queen. And there's no such thing as American English. There's English and there's mistakes. But, there's differences between British English, American English, Australian English.
I mean, even we know that, and we don't speak English as a first language.
We might get confused with the different versions.
Yes, we get, of course, because it's not our first language.
Because if you read all the time,
you realize that there is a difference. Yeah. I mean, you just have to watch a show, different shows from the United States and Great Britain. The moment you turn on the TV, you realize there is a difference in the way people talk, in how the accent sounds, and of course in the writing, if you're not completely,
and it's also very interesting if you're watching athletes before the World Cup, and when they interview them, people from different English-speaking countries, they all sound completely different, but they're all speaking English, and they're speaking correct English in their way.
Yeah, exactly. But there's a certain category of American reader who thinks that is how English is, and it's anything else that doesn't align with their understanding of English is a mistake. And I make the joke about my facial tick when the dress fit, but because I read widely, I read things in translation, and you know that there are different varieties and different forms of English. But I'm told that in America there are some people who think that is how English is spoken. Yeah. American English is it.
Sadly enough, yes, true. Mm-hmm. May I ask you a question about Gordian not publishing?
You may.
Is that something you founded for your books to bring them out?
Yeah, it's something I because I needed to buy international, is it ISBN?
Yeah.
International serial book numbers. And I had to buy them from Nielsen. I did it under a company name rather than an individual name. And I think it's because Nielsen prefer it to be a company. Mm-hmm. So I bought 10, but then I bought 100 because I got a bonus from British Telecom. And so I bought 100 ISBN numbers. And so there is a possibility that in the future, Gordian Knot could become a small publishing house, but it's not something that I have the bandwidth to do personally at the moment. I would need to have a team of people. And as you can see from my background, there's not enough space to fit a team of people in here yet.
Yeah. So it's just for your books to get them out?
It is just for my books. But obviously at the moment, it looks like Gordian Knot has two authors. Obviously Cassie Rush writes an awful lot better than Caroline Goldsworthy does.
I hope you never start arguing about it.
Would be interesting.
I was on Felixstowe Radio one evening and being Cassie Rush talking about the books, and the following day I had to go to Next to pick up a garment, and I'd forgotten who I was. I'd actually forgotten who I was. She asked what my name was, and my face just went blank, and my mind went blank behind the face. Hang on, I've got the number here. I couldn't remember who I was at all. And I'm getting on a bit now, so it's becoming a feature. But who am I again?
Yeah, well. But it works
and
for
it's
you.
Also been suggested to me that I relaunch the police procedural with a new pen name, a more androgynous one, like L.J. Ross or J.D. Robb or something like that.
Why, may I ask?
Because it might make it easier to break into America as a more androgynous name. So then I would have 3 names, and I honestly don't think I could cope. So I'm still having that discussion.
You'd need something, I don't know,
less
to peek out of your, who am I?
You have to be, so you have to be less female for a police procedural that is bloody, slightly bloody, to break into the American market.
Just said.
That is what my book coach has been suggesting. And a friend of mine used to own a bookshop, the Woodbridge Emporium, and she one summer had a guy come into the shop and say, "I want a book. I don't care what it is. I just don't want anything written by a woman." So she sold him a couple of novels written by J.D. Robb.
That left me speechless now because it's because I think I
can't remember who J.D. Robb is, but isn't she Natalie Roberts?
I don't know, maybe.
I can't remember.
P.D. James, I mean.
Well, yeah.
The jokes on her, on him?
On him, because I think I found over the last decade or 2 decades that women tend to be even bloodier sometimes.
It doesn't
than
matter
male writers.
Who wrote the book,
as
long as I enjoy
I mean,
it.
some Val McDermid books are really quite scary.
Yeah, and you don't even need a gun for that.
No, there's one in particular that I remember reading, and the person was still alive and the killer was painting something using their blood and draining their blood from them. I think that was the Val McDermid one.
Now I'm
nice
completely... Yeah, it just blew my mind now. I'm completely... I've lost my train of thought now. Now that you've...
I'm so sorry. I think I might fight it, but I haven't really decided. But I need a new cover for book 3, and I need something that sort of fits more into the genre of police procedurals. Whereas I think the covers for Tangent and the cover for Recompense are great covers, but they don't quite fit into the genre. And the designer came up with a cover for the 3rd book, Perdition, and it just, it was even more divergent from what I wanted. So.
What I find somehow fascinating is that I thought with so many books sold online that just the name of the book cover isn't that important, because you can read a lot about it with just a mouse click, but it doesn't seem that way.
Yeah. But this is something that my book coach has come up with, and it's a discussion we're still to have, because obviously I've got the One Cosy series, the 1920s cozies, and as you've pointed out, there's the Kim David, or as Molly, the designer of the covers, called them, Pooch on the Prowl.
That's a good one.
Yeah. Have you ever come across a dog that's less pooch-like than a Rottweiler? They're big, chunky, soppy dogs, and they're heavy. Oh, but they're so sweet. The Rottweilers I've known have been very lovely. They're just that big, floppy, soppy dog. They have a terrible reputation, which is entirely undeserved.
At the other end of the leash is the problem.
Yeah. It usually is.
Yeah. Oh, it's always the owner. It's never the dog.
How they train them.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Or not.
I mean, just a thought. I mean, coming back to the cover problem. I mean, it does tend to get ridiculous when you think of the American market. Teacup, think of what Mari Hanna said about her Kate Daniels books. She showed it to us. The covers, the usual covers are great, I think. Yeah, they reflect, like you said, the story, what is going on, and then they published them in the United States. Yeah, and what was on the cover was a woman in a short skirt, high heels, and a weapon in her hand.
But I think it's what appeals.
I mean, seriously.
Yeah, but it's what appeals to the American market, and it's the same with other countries. The story is still the same, but the book covers are different from country to country.
Yeah.
I mean, they do it for a reason. I don't understand why it has to be that way, but that's the way they sell books. Otherwise,
well, for me at the moment, it is, it's one cover per book because I can't afford to do different covers for different markets. But what I do use is a company run by a young German chap called Alex Newton, and Alex's company is called K-Lytics. And what he does, what he and his now team do, because he's been going quite some time, is that they look at the Kindle market, but they focus on the .com, Amazon.com, because obviously it's the biggest market in the world, and they focus on that. So I read his reports religiously for domestic thrillers, police procedurals, cozy mysteries, because of the information that he garners within those reports, and the covers and the blurbs and who are the top writers. And so that information I find very, very useful. Some people will sort of dismiss it because it encourages you to write to market. But what is the point of writing and then not selling? I think living and starving in a garret is very 19th century. I think it went out of fashion at the end of the 1800s. I don't think it's I mean obviously with rising fuel prices and the rising cost of food, etc., we might be doing it again, and it might become fashionable again. Some rather hope not.
You want to write your stories, but you also want to sell them, and if you have to tweak it a bit, I guess you would do it.
I mean, if it's just a cover, you can go for it, I suppose.
I mean, you wouldn't write something completely different and put on a cover you can't stand, but here and there a bit, understandable.
That's one of the things that led me down the route of becoming an independent author rather than trad, was the number of authors I met in 2018 who were saying, I hate the title, I hate how they've changed the story, I hate the cover. I was hearing those comments from different people. But there was that whole lack of control and lack of input. And I was just like, do you know what? And this isn't for me, because I am a control freak. I like, I listen and I pay attention to the market, and I pay attention to the publishing business. But at the end of the day, this is my stuff. I've worked a long time in the corporate world, so I know about making business decisions. But at the same time, this is my stuff. This is what I want to do, and I will jolly well going to do it my way.
I think most people wouldn't like it if someone else would change their creation, because it's what you did. And if you decide to change something, that's fine, because you decided. But if someone else comes along and say, okay, we're going to change this and switch that, it wouldn't go down favorably.
And I've heard trad authors who are trad published, heard them say that their stories have been changed. It's no longer their story. It's what the editor, what the publishing house wanted, and that just doesn't sit well with me.
I can understand that. Because it's your creation, like you said, and
I mean, I want to write stuff that sells, but I do that by writing stories that are good. Great characters, putting in the atmosphere, getting professional editors, cover designers, proofreaders on board, because it is a village. It's not just me. I mean, the team may not sit around me and they're not directly employed by me, but there is a team. There's a team at work on my books. I don't do it all on my own, which is why I prefer independent author rather than self-published, because it isn't just myself.
Caroline, Cassie, anything else you would like our listeners to know, we would like to share?
Oh, gosh, COVID is horrible. It's not gone away, and it takes an awfully long time to get over it. So don't catch it. Take your injections. Be good. And keep your fingers crossed.
Will do.
Oh, it's been awful. I am sick of being sick now. I really, really am.
Can imagine that and understand that.
I'm just so tired. But it was good yesterday. But yesterday was the first time in nearly a month where I managed to get through the whole day without needing a little sleep.
So we keep our fingers crossed.
Keep our fingers crossed
for you.
Thank you. So thank you so much. Thank you for having me on the show.
Thank you for being on the show.
Next book is out?
in September.
I'm planning for September. I've got edits to do, but I print them off and then I work on the paper.
Just a few weeks.
And about a week or so ago, I couldn't read the edits because the words were fuzzy. But this week they have been less fuzzy, so I've been able to start work on those again.
So very soon, on the stroke of death.
On the stroke of death.
We will look forward to it, and so will hopefully our listeners. So thank you for
I do
joining
hope
us.
so. Thank you very much indeed for inviting me.
You're most welcome. You did enjoy this episode as much as we did? Then hit subscribe and don't miss the next episode. Also, make sure to follow us on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. If you like to support us and buy us a coffee, you can do so via Buy Me a Coffee and other platforms. You can find all the necessary links in the description. Until next time.